So new texts have been released from everyone's favorite FBI adulterers, Lisa Page and Peter Strzok. What these texts shows that there could have been coordination to strategically leak to the media details of the Russia investigation. These texts that I'm going to be referencing have been used as the impetus for congressional oversight Republicans to send a letter to Rod Rosenstein asking that more information be declassified because they're worried about what the implications of this are, which we'll get to at the end of this. So the texts and questions are the following, and the timeline is going to be really important to show what the intent behind this was. So the first text was sent April 10th, 2017, and I'll link these below, but Peter Strzok says to Lisa Page, "I'd literally just gone to find this phone to tell you I want to talk to you about the media leak strategy with the DOJ before you go." This is obviously hugely important because it's also implying that the DOJ is involved. We know people at the DOJ like Bruce Orr were heavily involved in back channeling to the FBI and things like that. So this is going to be very, very important because this is implicating people at the FBI and DOJ working together to come up with a strategy to leak to the press about this sort of stuff. Now, this was April 10th. April 11th, big stories start to hit about the Carter Page FISA application all over the news, which are going to be damaging to Trump's image, the image of his team, that are detailing how Carter Page may have been a Russian stooge, he may have been working with Russia as a spy and things like that. And so then the day after all these stories come out, which would be April 12th, 2017, Peter Strzok texts the following. He says he congratulates Lisa Page on a job well done, referring to the two derogatory articles about Carter Page. In the text, Strzok warns Page two articles are coming out, one which is worse than the other about Lisa's namesake. Well done, Page, he adds. By Lisa's namesake, her last name's Page, as in saying Carter Page. So they're referencing that these stories that are about to be coming out have to do with Carter Page. This is them knowing about the stories before they come out, proving that they were in fact talking to the press. Now this makes sense because we see from text messages prior that we know during some of these text messages between Strzok and Page, Lisa Page is actually claims she's on the other line with Delvin, who was Delvin Barrett, who worked for the New York Times at the time. So we know that they were talking to the press. But this is just more damaging information that shows that they were coordinating these leaks to the press, which is going to be hugely unethical and terrible. Now, remember, this isn't the first leak. We also had the leaks about Mike Flynn's conversation with Kislyak, which ended up getting him drummed out of office once that information came out. We had, and which was one of the most devastating stories. It's so confusing and crazy you can't even believe it. The CNN was sitting on the story about the dossier, and James Comey had a meeting with Trump to tell him that they were just waiting for a reason to run this story, kind of like a bona fides to be able to run it. And then they used the very meeting that Comey had with Trump as the reason to release the story about the dossier, because they claimed, oh, if Trump was briefed about it, there must be something to it. In other words, it appears as if the meeting with Trump from Comey was a setup. Someone leaked that meeting as a meeting about, oh, we're afraid CNN will run this story if they only have a reason. And that very meeting was leaked to be the reason for the story. So we know that people inside the intel communities have been leaking to hurt Trump all amongst us. So now that we see texts that are proof that are talking about how people in the FBI and the DOJ are working on leak stories, it becomes even more damning. Now, why is this important? First, it shows that, again, the FBI is acting with bias, and other intel places like the DOJ is acting with bias against the Trump campaign. This is devastating because understand that people like Strzok and Page that are doing these leaks, they work not just on this Trump investigation, but also on the Hillary investigation. For some reason, Strzok was involved in every interview, every piece of almost every interview, I should say. Don't want to be too hyperbolic, but most of the major decisions in the case, all of them came through at one way or another Peter Strzok working on this case. Peter Strzok, for example, was the person who decided to sit on the Hillary emails that showed up on Anthony Weiner's laptop, which the IG report, contrary to what the media would have you believe, specifically said that they did not have confidence that Peter Strzok's bias didn't affect his decision. In other words, the IG knew that he was biased, said that it was very troubling that it appeared he was willing to use his position to act act on his bias. And furthermore, they weren't satisfied that he didn't use that bias when he decided to sit on those emails and instead pursue the Trump-Russia investigation. Now we know that this same person is apparently talking with people at the DOJ as well, and people to control leaks that are going out to the media. This is terrible. This is what we've been talking about all along, where over and over it seems like these intel agencies were out to get Trump. Are we surprised? Chuck Schumer told us all this. He said, why would Trump criticize the intel agencies? They have 6 ways of Sunday getting back at you. Well, we see that over and over and over again, where they're acting corrupt or incompetent, though I choose with all the evidence as much as we're seeing for it to be corruption, in their efforts to oust Trump. Remember, these are the same people that wanted an insurance policy, they said in text, to make sure Trump wasn't elected. The same people that could smell Trump supporters at local Walmarts and things like that. Just truly terrible people that were acting with bias to hurt Trump. Now we find out they're leaking to the people in the press to further damage the Trump presidency and make him look bad. It just goes to show that this investigation from the get-go was not based on good faith. It was based both sides. Both the Hillary investigation was softballed and the Trump investigation, he was gone after in corrupt ways. Leaks were used to hurt him by the intelligence agencies. And if we can't trust the intel agencies to act properly, how are we able to get to the bottom of any of this? Again, I've been saying for over a year, all the crimes that Trump's accused of doing with Russia, even the crimes that Hillary's accused of committing, which are many on both sides, all of that pales in comparison to if we have unelected intel agencies that are acting as kingmakers and deciding to favor one candidate over another. That has the potential to destroy the elections in this country like nothing we could ever imagine Russia doing, because they can legally spy on anyone they want. They are able to, without us knowing, shift or have investigations to accuse people of being corrupt while allowing other crimes from the other side that they favor to go unpunished. And this could literally make almost every election moot, as the FBI or all these intel agencies would be able to use their position, strategic leaks to the media, wiretaps on people, things of that nature, to decide who do we want to be elected, who do we want to be president. And we know what they don't want, and that's outsiders. They didn't want Bernie. They don't want Trump. Even perceived that. You might say, I don't think Trump's an outsider. Perhaps you're correct, but he was not. He was a perceived outsider when it came to him opposed to Hillary Clinton. Even that can't be tolerated. If you're a progressive and you hate Trump, you might be saying, well, so what? They went after Trump, no big deal. But your candidate will be going after next. Do you really think they wouldn't do something like this to Jill Stein or a real progressive, someone who maybe doesn't want regime change wars around the country, or that maybe wants to address things like too big to fail banking policies? Of course not. These establishment people in the unelected bureaucracies, such as the intel community, military-industrial complex, and the people at the top of the establishment, Republicans and Democrats, they don't want outsider voice. It's got to be the same people running things, the same policies year in and year out. And so now that we find out that the intel agencies could abuse their power in a way that we're seeing now, this is devastating for our democracy, and it means that you're never going to have a real choice. Your only choice will be people that have been vetted for the intel community, who you didn't get to choose. Any outside opinions won't be welcome. So this should definitely be looked into. Obviously, it seems that the oversight committees are trying to get more declassified, but look for Rod Rosenstein to again bluster about how, oh, this isn't important and we can't release this because it'll hurt our secretive processes and people's lives could be damaged. The same rhetoric they say over, that's what they said with the Nunez menu. Was anyone's life compromised with the release of that memo? Of course not. So I look for Rosenstein to deny declassifying anything. Hopefully Trump eventually does declassify this, as the video I put earlier today says. But yeah, this is a big deal, and everyone should be worried about the FBI, people at the top of the FBI and the DOJ, strategically leaking details of an investigation just to hurt a political campaign. It proves that they're acting in a partisan manner, and they don't really care about the true intent of the investigation, which is solving potential election interference.